As the 2024 F1 season kicked off, teams were on edge, wondering if Red Bull Racing would maintain its dominant streak from the previous year. McLaren driver Oscar Piastri breathes a sigh of relief as the feared speed of the Red Bull car falls short of expectations. So let's dive into this video today to uncover the top-secret revelation that has McLaren calling for an investigation. Following Red Bull's remarkable dominance in the 2023 season, winning 21 out of 22 races, their rivals were left facing a daunting challenge. The gap between Red Bull and the competition was staggering throughout most races. As Red Bull unveiled their car for the 2024 season, anticipation was high. However, the extent of modifications made to the car surprised many, exceeding initial expectations. Oscar Piastri is relieved about Red Bull's speed. These modifications proved to be effective for the RB20. Verstappen clinched victory in the race with a lead of over 22 seconds, an impressive feat. Oscar Piastri initially expressed doubts about the Red Bull's performance after qualifying, but he later revised his opinion after the race. Piastri now believes that the gap between Red Bull and the chasing pack is narrower compared to the previous year, despite Verstappen's dominant win at the Bahrain Grand Prix. Before the 2024 season, there was speculation about whether Red Bull with the RB20 would be unbeatable. When asked about the comparison between Red Bull's advantage this year and last year, Piastri stated to media outlets including Racing News 365, "No, I think it was a bit more realistic to what we expected, to be honest. I think they look in a pretty similar place to last year, a similar kind of gap." He also said, "It's a lot closer than I expected. Mercedes looked quick and Fernando looked quick. It's always hard to judge on a Friday, but I think we're around the points. With the teams we are around, being near the podium or the 10th is very much possible, so hopefully we can stay near the front of that mix." So, not a massive surprise, to be honest. And in the races last year, they were always quicker than they were in qualifying, but maybe still not quite as far ahead as we first feared at the start of testing, but still a long way ahead. "I think we're in a decent place," he added. "Still a bit inconsistent and up and down, so it's hard to know exactly how we will fare, but it looks like a similar story for everyone." He also stated that there are some runs we need to look at in more detail as to why they were how they were, both good and bad, but I think the overall feeling of the day is pretty positive. It always feels a bit pathetic blaming the wind on stuff, but it's difficult out there when it's so windy. These cars have a different balance and a different amount of downforce depending on what the wind is doing. It was tricky out there, and tomorrow is going to be more of the same. McLaren was with the leading group of cars in Bahrain to carry momentum from the end of last year, where the team was amongst Ferrari and Mercedes in the battle for best of the rest. Having matched Mercedes for pace in the season opener, Piastri said, "I think it's not a bad way to start the year. Compared to last year, we'll definitely take it. So I think the pace was more or less how I thought it would pan out. We're going to be very close with Mercedes, Ferrari's team a bit of a step ahead, Red Bull a clear step ahead, but honestly, not a bad way to start the year. We'll see what the next few circuits have in store for us, some quicker layouts and very different tarmac, so we'll see if that suits us better or worse, hopefully better. Not a bad way to start the year, and I feel like on a personal note, it was a decent race, so I'm pretty pleased." As for his own race, Piastri finished the Grand Prix in 8th place after losing out to the Mercedes of Hamilton in a brief tussle out of the pits. Hamilton pitted a lap before the Aussie in the second round of pit stops and had more heat in his tyres as he stormed up to the rear of Piastri's MCL38 as the latter returned to the track after his pit stop. Hamilton made short work of passing Piastri, with the McLaren driver admitting he put too much heat into his Pirellis trying to hold off the Briton, and that also cost him lap time. Asked if he could have challenged Hamilton for the position after the pass, he replied, "Not massively, no. I think when I battled him out of the pits, I really put a lot of heat into my tyres, so that took a bit of time to settle back in. With these tyres being so sensitive, potentially you pay the price the whole stint. I think everyone who was behind you looked quick, it's just with the dirty air with these cars, as soon as you start getting a little bit closer, it's tricky. I think the pace was okay at the end, but I think for the whole race, to be honest, it was pretty even. Maybe Lewis was a little bit quicker. Red Bull F1's chasing back is not too far. Moreover, while the possibility of another season dominated by Red Bull hangs over the sport, Piastri remains optimistic about the competitiveness of Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren. "I feel like there's some optimism and hope," said the Australian. "It'll be interesting to see where we are this weekend. Assessing our car's strengths and weaknesses against Red Bull's, hopefully we can be a bit closer here and at some other circuits. It wasn't as bad as some races last year." He also stated, "The significant thing for us is that being just 2/10 faster would have put us in P2 in qualifying. Even Leclerc had the quickest lap in Q2, which would have secured pole position. So I think the chasing pack is not too far behind." How big is Red Bull's margin? Helmut Marko, Red Bull's external advisor, predicted that their lead over competitors would be around 3/10 earlier this week. However, the paddock has differing opinions, with some suggesting the gap is over a second. Ferrari managed to outpace Sergio Perez on Thursday and Friday, but Max Verstappen dominated on the season's opening day. So, what's the real situation? Oscar Piastri doesn't think any Formula One competitor will have the confidence to challenge Max Verstappen and Red Bull at the start of the next season. Despite not leading the times during last week's pre-season test in Bahrain, there's a general feeling in the paddock that Verstappen and Red Bull are comfortably ahead. The RB20, with its visibly distinct bodywork compared to its dominant predecessor, sends a threatening message to all rival teams. Despite McLaren's challenges last year, Piastri doesn't believe they've closed the gap during the winter. Assessing Red Bull's progress, Piastri remarked, "They don't seem to be slow. Max showed immense strength on the first day, and Sergio Perez seemed more comfortable on the last day. They are the team to beat. I'm not sure of the extent of their advantage, but it's probably enough. Yes, it's enough to feel comfortable. As for the others, I'm not sure, but I believe Red Bull is still the favorite." Piastri and his McLaren teammate Lando Norris delivered consistent performances throughout the three-day period, facing only minor obstacles along the way. In the second McLaren, Lando Norris finished bottom of the timesheets after abandoning his initial qualifying simulation on soft tyres. Despite admitting he had a messy day, he agreed with Piastri that the overall picture looked encouraging for the working team. Further, he said, "It was a decent day, probably a little bit better than I was expecting overall," he said. "Not my best day, just a bit messy on my part. Hopefully I got that out of the way and can do a better job tomorrow. A good day for us." "We tried some things and progressed with understanding the car a bit more, but there are still plenty of things to try and improve on. It's clear that Red Bull is still towards the top, and Ferrari is close. Mercedes is always a question mark. They were never going to be bad." McLaren team director Andrea Stella acknowledged that their technical department did not address all the concerns from the previous season during the winter break. However, he noted a significant improvement compared to previous years. Sharing his perspective on McLaren's position ahead of the Bahrain Grand Prix, Piastri stated, "I would like to believe that we are positioned at the front of the grid. I don't feel we are in a position to challenge Red Bull. I don't think anyone on the grid feels that way at the moment. However, I think we are somewhere towards the front." So, what do you think of Red Bull's top secret revealed? Comment below and subscribe for more.